Call of Duty is going on its 16th year of life here coming up at the end of the month, and across that vast amount of time, there have spawned plenty of memorable moments, games, and entire franchises, including the likes of Modern Warfare, which is being soft rebooted in just a week's time, as you know. Now, as we wait anxiously in anticipation for said game to launch, I figured we could take a look back and check out 13 of the best weapons in COD history, the literal best. From not only just the most iconic, but also in sheer performance-wise, we'll be taking a look at some of the most iconic and likely some of your favorite weapons throughout the entire franchise's history. And as a fair disclaimer, this list is in no particular order, and of course is no definitive list because, well, it's a subjective topic. If you have any that you'd like to add, let's get a discussion going down there in the comment section down below. I already polled you guys over on Twitter a couple of days ago, and it seems like our lists kind of matched up here for the most part, so let's have some fun with this. If you're also excited for Modern Warfare and all that we're about to do with the new game, be sure to hit that subscribe button to stay up to date on anything regarding the game. But that said, let's begin. Let's start with an absolute classic, the ACR 6.8 from Modern Warfare 3. Now, this wasn't the first time that we'd seen the ACR in Call of Duty. It had been in the previous Modern Warfare of Modern Warfare 2 as well, and became a huge fan favorite even in that game, but it really had its time to shine in Modern Warfare 3, where not only was it a more refined version of the weapon, but in a technical sense, it was the better choice of the two by far. There are a few weapons that you probably remember using exclusively in Modern Warfare 3, and I'm sure that this was one of them. You'd be smart to as well, because this thing boasted a damage of 45 damage per shot at its max potential, and had a headshot multiplier of 1.4, meaning that would bring headshots up to 63 DPS, meaning that you could two-shot enemies with even one headshot in that gunfight. You could literally tear through enemies. It's accurate, it's got a controllable fire rate and recoil, it's incredibly mobile for a rifle, and it's got insane damage and was legendary even at its prime. So what's not to love? Let's keep the ball rolling with another one that was absolutely lethal, and one that was perhaps an unsung hero, as it was a part of not everyone's favorite title back in the day. We're taking a look next at the Honey Badger from Ghosts. This thing took up to 9 squad points to unlock, but boy was it worth it. Statistically speaking, it had the potential to two-shot kill enemies if you landed both headshots, and had a near best-in-class fire rate, only being beaten out by the ARX and the FAD at the time. It's much more of a close quarters to mid-range weapon compared to a longer range engagements, better suited for those closer engagements, which in Ghosts, along with that TTK and its positive handling, secured its spot as a favorable weapon when playing in even a semi-aggressive playstyle, let alone being full-on aggressive. The built-in suppressor also allowed for a nice ability to stay off that map as well, one that I'm sure you probably loved if you were the one using it, or maybe got agitated with back in the day when it was the prime of Ghosts. Next up, let's talk about a few classics. Going back to Black Ops 1, let's first start out with the Galil. This thing was absolutely legendary, and probably not many weapons will rank higher when you think about Black Ops 1 as those more iconic weapons. That's probably one of the ones that just immediately jumps to your mind. This thing had 2-hit kill potential if you ended up landing your headshots, which, as we mentioned with the other weapons, is incredibly powerful and something that going into a gunfight affords you a fantastic advantage. It was commonly used with a suppressor, and it became a huge stealth weapon, but even if you didn't, it was still something that you could get in and get out with because the handling was absolutely fantastic. Though if you did use that suppressor, it would sacrifice that little bit of a quicker time to kill because you'd get a few more 4-hit kills, but overall, it still was worth it. You could still absolutely shred with it, and it afforded a versatile playstyle for any player that ended up using it. You could use it in close, medium, or long-range engagements, and it was just absolutely fantastic. After that, we'll talk about, again staying within Black Ops 1, the Commando, one weapon that I remember absolutely loving back in the day. This thing had a 3 to 4 shot kill potential, but again, had that potential for 2-shot kills if you ended up landing both headshots. This thing was accurate, was mobile, had very low recoil, and handled brilliantly. Now, it was comparative statistically to other weapons, but it was used because of its more so balanced nature in terms of where it was good. It's a powerful weapon with surprisingly little drawbacks, whereas other weapons would have features that were greatly advantageous in one category, but have drawbacks in others, whereas the Commando is relatively constant across the board, a sort of plateau of how good it was. But that was something that made it an absolutely fantastic weapon, and again, easy to use, easy to jump into, and easy to do well with. So in that sense, it was a fan favorite, but also was pretty killer on the battlefield. Next up, we're going to jump up to Modern Warfare 3, and we're going to talk about one that is a fan favorite to many, that being the MP7. This at the time had the second highest mag capacity of the SMGs, only losing out to the P90. It also had a high fire rate, it was powerful and was almost the best in class in SMGs. It had very low recoil, I'm talking minimal, and with the right loadouts, you could negate it entirely. It had precise iron sights, and its rate of fire allowed you to even shred at a distance. Even though it was something of a weapon that was way more favored in close quarters engagements, you could still map players. And sure, it probably helped if your enemies didn't have the best aim to combat your gunfight with, say, a rifle that was of high caliber, but it was definitely something that was possible. You could absolutely shred at any single range here with this. I remember this being the go-tos of so many players, and it's only logical as to why it was. Moving along a little bit further, we're gonna jump to one of my personal favorite weapons within Call of Duty's history, that being Black Ops 2's MSMC. This thing had the highest damage of an SMG in Black Ops 2, it had an absolutely solid range, and with consistent and manageable drop-offs, it had a couple of more drop-off steps than we'll see in other weapons in COD history, but it was something that it was consistent and you could definitely still range people with it. It had a controllable rate of fire and very minimal recoil, along with other various handling statistics like the mobility and reload speeds and others. It made it a beast of a weapon and one that was absolutely reliable. This was one that, from competitive play to casual play, was something you could absolutely dominate with. It didn't matter what you were going into it. And again, as we mentioned with the MP7, you could absolutely range people with this still, even though it technically had a drop-off that was pretty significant. It is certainly more suited towards close quarters engagements, but that didn't mean you had to just only stick to them. The MSMC is still, for many reasons, my favorite, but it was a hell of a weapon and a powerhouse in Black Ops 2. We're gonna jump back in time. I know we're jumping all over the place here with this one, but the next weapon I wanna talk about is that of the UMP-45, another weapon that is absolutely insane when you think about it, and of course, you probably remember it being so powerful. Now, it was great in Modern Warfare 3 as well, but in Modern Warfare 2, it was next level. 40 damage per shot for an SMG? Get out of here. Unlocked immediately, and it was definitely one that was easy to use with nice iron sights, controllable recoil, a solid fire rate, and of course a killer damage per shot. It had the quickest TTK in the game outside of the MP5K, and with stopping power, you could two-shot kill someone. And even with a silencer, didn't make much of a difference in terms of decreasing that damage. If you guys have played any Modern Warfare 2, I'm sure you've seen that run and gun class setup that comes along with that, but it was an absolute powerhouse of a loadout. It was the go-to for so many different reasons, but again, just being how powerful it was in those certain situations, there were very rarely situations that, unless it was a shotgun and it was a one-shot potential, that you'd end up losing a gunfight if you shot first and connected with those shots in close quarters. So it's definitely one that rightfully earned its place as one of the best weapons in COD history. After that, we're gonna flash back a little bit more in time. We're gonna go back to a classic of World at War. Now, to me, there are many weapons in World at War that were absolutely fantastic. The PPSH, the M1A1, the STG, the Browning, the trench gun. There were so many that were absolutely great, but when you consider probably some of the most standout ones, there's no way you missed the MP40. That thing was insanely powerful back in the day, boasting a tremendous damage, and also, when you put things in like the round drum on it, you could just go to town. One of my fondest memories with the MP40 is always just running lobbies on Dome, because you could just run in and out of spawn points. You could end up getting enough cover and just absolutely annihilating players in as quick a time as you could imagine. It was absolutely fantastic for running gun players. Of course, it wasn't something that worked on all maps perfectly, but for those ones where you could get up in the face of the enemy, you'd be hard pressed to lose gunfight. Next up, we'll talk about two classics from the Modern Warfare franchise. Firstly, it started out with probably the fan favorites, that being the Intervention. Now, statistically speaking, it may not be one of the highest performing weapons, but it was definitely one of the most iconic in MW2 and also the entire Modern Warfare series, but it also could hold its own in the right hands. The mobility, the handling, and all that came along with it, the ADS in speed, that was all stuff that absolutely made it iconic, and probably a reason why it was one of those fan favorites for those in the quick scoping community and even just the general use community. So in that sense, the Intervention was certainly iconic with its not only signature audio, but it could pack a punch if you ended up handling it properly. That's something that once you got used to it, once you learned it a little bit, it was incredibly easy to use, and you could run lobbies with it as a result. After that, let's talk a little bit about another sniper rifle, that being the Barrett 50 cal. Now, this was great in seriously all the variations that we've seen it so far in, but Modern Warfare 3 was the best of these iterations that we have seen. The Modern Warfare 3 variation in particular boasted a 98 DPS, or damage per shot, with a 1.5 times multiplier to the head and the chest, which naturally when you think about a sniper taking shots to that, that's of course going to be a one-shot kill. That multiplier would equate out to 147 damage per shot, which you only have 100 damage needed to secure a kill, so obviously you're well and above everything there. But the crazy part was that with just a simple 1.1 times multiplier for limbs and stomach, well, it still awarded you a one-shot kill. Now, what made it even more useful was the fact that just like many of the other snipers we've seen throughout Call of Duty history, it was insanely easy to quickscope with. Its mobility and handling was actually fantastic for that of a 50 caliber weapon. But anyways, don't want to focus too much on that one. It was a fantastic one, but that said, we're rounding into our final three now with this, and we're going to jump over to Black Ops 2 once again with the pre-patch PDW coming in at the next weapon to discuss. Now, before its patch, this is something that the PDW was absolutely fantastic. Afterwards, it was still pretty good, but it wasn't anywhere near the levels at which it was in the beginning couple of months of Black Ops 2. Before its patch, the PDW allowed players to have a much tighter hip spread and a much lower recoil, which even post-patch, it has a very controllable recoil. So you were pretty much using a laser pointer and something that for an SMG had some decent damage, had a decent rate of fire, actually really good rate of fire comparatively, and an absolute legendary magazine size. So you could just tear through enemies with absolute ease, and therefore I think it secured its spot as one of the best weapons in COD history. The M16 will jump back to COD 4 and of course Modern Warfare Remastered. I don't think this one really needs any explanation. If you played COD 4 back in the day, you know that it is a one burst, and you know that it was absolutely one of the most broken weapons, but in a sense that connection and netcode may not have helped its case too much to make it a little bit more level across the playing field, but it was something, if you used the M16, it was one burst, that's all you had to land, and you secure the kill. Something that for conserving ammo was absolutely fantastic, and also making sure that you just took out the enemy as efficiently and quickly as possible. That one has definitely become iconic for that, but it's definitely one of the best weapons in COD history as well. And finally, I want to talk about one final weapon in Modern Warfare 2. This one is one that probably was infuriating to you if you ended up having to go up against it. That is the pre-patch Model 1887s. If you ended up running these akimbo, you could absolutely map people with a secondary. The Model 1887 in its own right was absolutely fantastic, single-wielded, but again, if you've played Modern Warfare 2, you definitely know that akimbo was insane, and if you played back in the prime, you might even remember what that was like. Having a nearly guaranteed one shot, one kill in close to medium range, and then even at some longer ranges, you could still 2 to 3 shots depending on how much of your akimbo shots landed, but it was just absolutely insane. So that said, that's where we're gonna round out this video. If you guys have any you'd like to let me know that you guys would add to the list, feel free to down there in the comment section down below. Again, this I just wanted to take a little bit of a retrospective look back at and have some fun taking a look at some COD history. So let me know your thoughts down there in the comment section down below. If you guys enjoyed the video, make sure you drop a like down below. And of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure you guys subscribe so you don't miss a single thing regarding all things Modern Warfare. We are so close, and I cannot wait to jump into the content here with you guys. So if you're interested in any of that, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single thing. If you guys also want to follow me over on Twitter and Instagram, those are the best places to get connected outside of YouTube. I can live on both those. If you guys want to strike up a conversation, ask me a question, wherever it may be, that link is down there in the description below. That said, thanks so much for watching. My name is Espresso. I'll see you guys later. Take care and peace.